Trolldier. He'd be able to kill me with just one shot if he got in close. And I can't lose this kill streak. My every instinct is telling me to back up, but I watched the How to Counter Trolldier series, so I know he'll be counting on me to do that. The real way to beat you is to do the exact opposite! Fool. I heard you'd use up all of your rockets earlier, so I know you have no way to escape. I've won, exactly as planned.
Aw, crap.
I guess the big thing to take away from this video is Trolldier has a gun. Sometimes. If you so choose. It seems so simple at first, and yeah, I guess it kind of is, but I've never really bothered to play it until now, outside of recording for a secondary showcase at least, because, I don't know, somehow it just didn't feel right to me. See, Trolldier is all about surprising your opponent, either by sneaking up on them, doing a jump they don't expect you to do, or hitting a garden they thought was impossible at that moment. Whatever it might be, every kill you get as Trolldier involves catching your opponent off guard in some way. But the one immutable law of Trolldier that everyone seems to know is that you can't do any damage outside of melee range. So to take that one rule and go, surprise, I actually can kill you from over here, it completely flips the entire concept on its head, and it feels, I don't know, unsportsmanlike? I don't know if that makes any sense. At least with Hybrid Trolldier and gunboats, you're jumping around with the launcher out, so everyone knows you're gonna be dealing damage at range, but this loadout feels like carrying around a big orange glowing sign that says, I can't do ranged damage, and then doubling back on that for a cheap kill. But I thought about it some more, and I realized that, yeah, it's gonna feel cheap for the first kill you get on someone, but once you do, they know you can do that now. So now it's just like any other interaction with the Trolldier, just a lot more complicated. It's like a minigame where they're trying to figure out just how differently they need to approach you compared to regular Trolldier. And it just so happens that the answer to that question is completely. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This video is how to play Shotgun Trolldier, not how to counter Shotgun Trolldier. That one is for a couple years from now, after people are sick of the Trolldiers that watch this video. Anyway, the conclusion I came to is that Shotgun Trolldier has a lot more depth to it than the cheap trick it seems like at first. And most of that depth comes from the balance that you strike between your two damage dealing options. I'm going to talk about what that looks like on either end of the spectrum, the weapons I prefer for each of those two playstyles, and then go into some other options and tips towards the end of the video. I guess it's a little less consistently structured than other How to Trolldier videos, but it's fine. I don't even have a real conclusion, to be honest. But I do have a marketable plushie. Oh no! That's right, I partnered with Youtooz to make this little guy. Except he's not actually that little. They sent me the prototype and it's like way bigger than I thought it'd be. Oh my god. You can see like the eyes peeking out of the box. That's terrifying.
Folded in half.
Oh my god. Spirit Airlines is really cheaping out these days. This plushie Trolldier comes with the iconic hat, beard, and shovel, and in case you're wondering, yes, it does in fact crit while explosive jumping. It is a plushie, so the damage that's being tripled by the crit is, you know, 0, but it is a crit, and that's not all. If you pull the string on his back, he says one of his signature catchphrases,
"Funny ragdoll. Can't win them all." So I've noticed over my time playing TF2 that a person's hat choice can say a lot about them as a player. This series of videos will...
Hello? Did it break? Hello? Turns out they couldn't fit the entirety of the Stereotype series on the little playback device, so we just scrapped that feature that I definitely didn't just make up for a bit. It's not a string that I taped onto his back, ignore that. Despite the lack of signature catchphrases, it is still a really great quality plush. I really like how the designers implemented the Youtooz eyes in a more subtle way. They're the highlights in the eyes rather than the eyes themselves. It looks really nice.
Daisy, are you interested in the SoundSmith limited edition Youtooz plush?
Turns out she was just interested in the box. But you might be interested in the limited edition SoundSmith. The limited edition SoundSmith Youtooz plush is on sale for pre-order right now, and it'll only be on sale for 4 weeks, so make sure you click on the link in the description and pick one up before it's gone forever. Think of it like one of those original limited, strange, festive scatterguns, except, you know, it's not like $219. Oh my god. Anyway, the link in the description. Click it and buy my plushie. Okay, thanks, bye. Okay, so what does it look like when you mostly rely on your shotgun? Fat Scout. But better? When walking around with my shotgun out, I was immediately reminded of Fat Scout. High health, lower walking speed, slightly worse shotgun, you get it. But there are a few very key differences here. You've got a little less health than Heavy, but still significantly more than Scout, and then the main thing that Fat Scout always struggled with was mobility, which isn't really an issue here. So the name I've settled on for this playstyle is Fat Scout +1. This works surprisingly well on maps or in places where gardening is generally more difficult. That could be low ceilings, close quarters, lots of staircases without proper clipping brushes applied to them for some reason. The basic premise here is that you have your shotgun out most of the time. You fight people at close to medium range, play around corners and on flank routes, and abuse your higher health pool to muscle your way through 1v1s. The rocket jumper is there for you when you need quick burst movement, but the main thing you're using here is still your shotgun. Because of that, most of the improvement you can do with Fat Scout +1 has a lot to do with just getting better with your shotgun. And that means improving your aim, and okay, look, there's already like 1.2 million videos out there on how to improve your aim in TF2, so if you want to go in depth, I'm sure there's a video out there for you, but for our purposes, here's the long and short of it. Turn on raw input, turn off mouse acceleration, turn off mouse acceleration in Windows, find a sensitivity, and if your mouse can change it, a DPI that works for you and stick to it, and finally, practice. Use an aim trainer if you really want to be sweaty. I don't know if I'm really qualified to say any more than that when it comes to aim, and honestly, improving aim is kind of boring to me, so what other small stuff can you work on to improve? First thing, get really good at short hops and rocket jumping in confined spaces. I talk more in depth about short hopping in my direct combat techniques video, so I'll leave a link in the description for that, but in this case, the short hops will be less about gardening and more about burst movement, getting to the flank, passing through tighter rooms, things like that. So try to focus on finding jumps and routes that shorten the time it takes to get from point A to point B. Load up your favorite maps in an offline server and practice your rollouts, practice your movement in those more confined areas, and over time, as you develop that muscle memory, you'll just get faster. Oh, and while you're at it, practice jumping and air strafing backwards. It sounds pretty simple, you just move your mouse in the other direction than you would to strafe forwards, but it really messes with muscle memory at first, so it does need some practice. There are absolutely going to be times where you'll need to retreat, and being able to keep the enemy gamer on your screen during that time makes dodging their shots significantly easier. It's also useful for fights with pyros or other super close range classes, since you can keep shooting them while you're jumping. And that's actually another big thing I'd recommend you work on to improve at Fat Scout +1. Shotgun aim while you're rocket jumping. Having 6 shots instead of just a melee means you're capable of dealing damage while moving around more. And that means fights are less about getting into the perfect position for that one shot, and more about hitting shots consistently over time while moving. And to do that, well, it's at this point that I finally need to double back on the cardinal rule of rocket jumping that I've hammered home multiple times. Hold W, okay? It's good. Congrats, Reddit Scout from 2020. We have finally arrived at one of the 2 situations where what I said back then wasn't exactly correct. Sorry for impact framing you with a shovel, by the way. That was probably a little harsh. Normally, when you air strafe, your camera follows the arc that you're strafing in. So if you strafed in a circle, your line of sight would be tangential to it.
It's the tangent line!
Usually that's totally fine, since you want to be looking at where you're going, but what if you also need to be aiming at a different target? This is where W strafing or helicopter strafing comes in. When you hold W while air strafing instead of A or D and then move your mouse like normal, you still curve through the air, but this time your camera points towards the center of the arc. In other words, you still air strafe, but essentially orbit around your target and keep your crosshair centered on them as you fall towards the ground. You see this technique used a lot in MGE and competitive, especially by roamer soldiers when they bomb, and you can also see it a lot in Uncle Dane videos? I guess it's probably because Dane really likes to do the Wrangler jump into Frontier Justice crit thing. So weirdly, if you want more example footage of W strafing being used effectively, I'd say to just go watch Uncle Dane frag videos. Now, I do want to qualify here that you should not use W strafing exclusively. In fact, I'd say you shouldn't even touch it until you've gotten the hang of regular air strafing. That gives you far more freedom of movement, and in my opinion, it should be what you default to. Ideally, you'd swap between regular air strafing and W strafing as needed for the situation you're in. You can even do it mid-jump too, you just need to press or let go of W. Anyway, to practice this, you can load up an offline server, and then lower gravity by a lot by enabling cheats and then typing this console command. Now what you want to do is jump above a specific spot that you pick out, I usually use health or ammo packs, and try to orbit around it with W strafing while keeping your crosshair on it the entire time. I'm pretty sure this is why they call it helicopter strafing, by the way. On a slightly more boring note, let's talk positioning. It's less exciting than movement tech, but it's just as important. See, Fat Scout's high health pool but limited movement means you're great at 1v1s, but very vulnerable to focus fire. He's at his best when you're picking off isolated players on the flank. But that limited movement also makes it really hard to get onto the flank in the first place. And plus, escaping is pretty much impossible once you've started a fight. You can't just turn around and leave when your walk speed is the same as a have that movement restriction. You get to pick your fights now, which is something that Fat Scout doesn't have at all. And that makes map knowledge a big priority here. Knowing where all the health and ammo is important for making quick escapes, but there are also tons of hiding spots out there that a Fat Scout would never be able to get into. Like, look at this bullshit. Come on. Your walking speed might still be pretty slow, and rocket jumping mid-fight can be a little clunky, but with this loadout, even at its worst, you're a Fat Scout that can show up anywhere at any time and escape just as easily. Okay, last thing, which shotgun is best for Fat Scout +1? Well, I don't know if there's a best, there's definitely a worst, but we'll get into that later. But my preferred shotgun is pretty basic. If Soldier could use the family business, it might be that, but he can't, so it's just stock. This playstyle usually engages at close to medium range and occasionally gets in really close with the rocket jumper. And stock is the most reliable option for Soldier at those ranges. It's easily the best secondary at medium range since it doesn't have the expanding spread thing that the panic attack does, and it's still a reliably good option for close and melee range. Where it starts to fall off is medium to long range though, like most shotguns. So even though we're focusing mostly on the shotgun here, remember that you do still have an excellent movement option in your back pocket, so you can always just jump in closer and... Oh, yeah, remember when this was a Trolldier video? I've been yapping so much about the shotgun that you might have forgotten we even have a market gardener, and that's kind of the entire point here. When you focus so much on your shotgun, the general vibe you're putting out is Fat Scout, and not that many people will even realize you can just do that. The Market Gardener is now a surprise mix-up tool that you can keep in your back pocket and throw out occasionally to catch someone off guard. This is another reason why you should practice short hops, by the way, because if you can consistently land gardens like this, it works really well paired with a shotgun. Think about it. If you're using a medium to long-range weapon, the best way to fight someone who has a shotgun is to just get away from them, out of their effective range. And if you've watched any of my other Trolldier videos before, what's the one big thing you're not supposed to do against a Trolldier?
Don't back up. Don't back up. Don't back up. Don't back up. You don't want to back up. Backing up versus Trolldier is bad. Don't back up.
Every part of this loadout synergizes shockingly well with every other part of it. I know TF2 is like a masterpiece of game design, so it shouldn't be that much of a surprise, but this is a joke subclass. Why does this work so well? This doesn't feel right. Maybe we should move back to the other side of the balance spectrum and talk about the Market Gardener more. Okay, so what does it look like when you mostly focus on the funny spoon?
It's kind of like buff flying scout. I don't know what to call it.
Oh my god. How did I not think of this until now? It's Eagle Scout. It's Eagle Scout. It's been right there the whole time. Eagle Scout is probably what you're picturing when you think of Shotgun Trolldier. Essentially, you're just playing Trolldier, focusing on jumping around and getting gardens like usual. It's just that you have a shotgun in your back pocket for when you need it. For that reason, I think there's a little less to talk about with Eagle Scout than there is with Fat Scout +1. It's a lot closer to the regular Trolldier that I've already talked about at length, but the main thing to cover is probably just which situations the shotgun comes out of the back pocket for. So, like I said many years ago, you can pull it out as a shit I missed my garden button or a finishing tool if they survive a crit, but it can also be a good way to soften up targets before finishing them with a short hop. As you can probably see from the footage, Eagle Scout is going to spend a lot more time in melee range compared to Fat Scout +1, and for that reason, my preferred weapon here is the panic attack. Melee range is, simply put, where this thing is really fucking good. You might remember back in the day when I did Secondary Showcase, I had to double back and talk about this thing for a second time because I didn't realize just how much damage this thing does when you connect every pellet at point blank range. It even crosses the dreaded heavy TF2 damage threshold when you combo it with a garden crit. But yeah, on regular old Fat Scout, I really loved the original panic attack. So much so that I made the first ever casual meta about panic attack Fat Scout. But I never really liked playing heavy with the reworked panic attack because he can't really move fast enough to take advantage of that close range buff. The enemy gamers can just, like, walk away. Luckily, the entire rest of our loadout on Eagle Scout centers around getting into melee range to begin with. So I found myself in far more situations where I could get those super satisfying meat shots. And then there's the switch speed, which, oh man, it feels so good to just... And on Eagle Scout, you really get to take advantage of that a lot. Remember, the switch speed buff only applies when swapping to the panic attack, not from it. That means it's at its best in situations where you quickly deploy it as a finisher or a backup, not when you have it out as a primary damage dealer. And don't get me wrong, it's still a shotgun. It's an excellent shotgun. The lack of random bullet spread helps it feel generally more consistent than stock and casual, and it can definitely hold its own on Fat Scout +1. It's just that I've gotten better results with it personally when I'm focusing more on gardens than I am on shotgun kills. Also, okay, this is a bit of a pet peeve, but the stock shotgun sound file has its transient right at the beginning of the sound, like you'd expect, but the panic attacks has like an 8 or 9 millisecond delay before the transient, which in combination with the 100 milliseconds of delay that TF2 already imposes on every sound that you hear at default settings, creates my crackpot, totally unproven and unscientific theory on why the panic attack is 9% less punchy and satisfying to fire than the stock shotgun, more so if you've lowered your S&D mix-ahead value like I have, and it's my firm belief that if the panic attack sound had just like 8 milliseconds or so shaved off of the beginning of it, it would feel just as good to use, if not better than stock. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Hi, Future SoundSmith here. While I was editing this rant, I had a thought. I'm willing to bet that the main reason for that delay at the beginning of the sound was because the panic attack was originally meant to fire in full auto. And sometimes, you know, as your health got lower, sometimes it was a really fast full auto. And so, like, an immediate, strong transient would probably get really grating after you used the weapon for a bit. So the sound probably worked very well for that intended purpose. It's single fire now, though, so the delay could be removed and it would probably feel better to fire, so thank you for coming to my second TED Talk. TEDx talk. I don't know. Back to the video. Now that I've got that out of my system, what about all the other secondary guns on Soldier? The reserve shooter. Okay, this one's pretty bad outside of hyper-specific situations for pretty obvious reasons. You won't be able to create situations to take advantage of its upside, which leaves you just kind of waiting around for it to happen instead of actively playing into it. It can work okay on Eagle Scout since you won't be using it that much anyway, and you get that smaller switch speed buff. It's just that the situations where you pull it out of your back pocket are a lot more specific, and it's mostly the ones where you just want to be a dick against other Trolldiers, or stand a chance against gunbutt soldiers, but for Fat Scout +1 or any other playstyle that primarily focuses on the shotgun, this really struggles to keep up and is pretty clearly the worst shotgun you could pick. Although, now that I think about it, this might actually be a viable option for like 2 weeks after this video comes out because, and this is just a guess, I'm pretty sure you're gonna be running into quite a few Trolldiers. And that's all the shotguns that Soldier can equip at least, so well, okay, there is the Bison, not a shotgun, but it is technically a damage-dealing gun that goes in Soldier's secondary slot, so can it be good on Trolldier? No, it sucks, but it is funny, so if that's a priority for you, it's always there. Common problems you'll run into on Shotgun Trolldier. You know, like regardless of which playstyle or weapon you use, it's kind of the last section I want to talk about. The first one is that you get stuck reloading like a lot. On regular Trolldier, you just need to worry about the ammo in your rocket launcher. Everything else is either passive or a melee, so ammo management ends up being pretty simple, but add another gun with 6 shots into the mix and things can get a little tedious if you're not staying on top of it. One solution I've found to be helpful is to try and keep at least 1 rocket saved in your launcher at all times. That way, if you're totally out of shotgun ammo and in a bad spot, you at least aren't a sitting duck and can easily retreat and go reload back to full. And the other thing I'd recommend is to get in the habit of reload canceling on your rocket jumper, pretty much for the same reason as before. I actually made a YouTube short on that earlier this year that goes more in depth, so I'll leave a link in the description for that if you haven't seen it. The next common problem is one that has more to do with what you're missing when you're swapping to a shotgun. Luckily, the solution here is a bit simpler than before. You have a shotgun. So, and lastly, there's Trolldier's Nemesis, which sadly is very much still a thing as Shotgun Trolldier. Sentries still shred you, unfortunately, so to be honest, there's not really that much you can do here. Unless it's near a corner. Or if you have a height advantage where it can't target you when you're pretty close to it. I also made a YouTube short about this technique, but here's the even shorter version. Rocket jump on top of the sentry from around the corner and then circle strafe on top of it to stay ahead of its tracking. Like I showed in the short, you could technically just destroy the sentry with the Gardener at this point, but if you're playing Shotgun Trolldier, not only can you take it down faster, you can also defend yourself against the NG, who will inevitably be running back to his gun once you start messing with it. His shotgun will deal more knockback to you without the man treads though, so it will be easier for him to knock you into the sentry's targeting range. Regardless, it's still not as reliable as just shooting it with a rocket launcher, but it's not quite as miserable as it could be. Alright, so that's kind of all I've got when it comes to using the shotgun on Trolldier. Do I have a well-structured conclusion that ties the entire video together and ends with a compelling call to action to like, comment, and subscribe? No, I warned you about this at the beginning of the video. Bye.
Oh, it's like that one fucking VeggieTales episode.
Their sheep had an unusual problem.
They tip over. Oh, look. There goes one now.
Yeah, anyway, if you can get it to sit up straight, it's a really great plushie. Hold on. Okay. Okay, I think we're good.